And I did the analysis on it. I did chi-square analysis on a Carpen's Q, and they both came out as significant, so that means that they were able to tell the difference between cognate and visceral, so they are two distinct types. And so the final thing that I've been doing recently, which has come out of the data from the survey and from the questionnaire or the discussion online that I did earlier, is a questionnaire that measures immersive response. So when I'm thinking of immersion, I generally think, so there's a person, and there's the game, and there's the technology that you're using to interact with the game. So the game itself, Kent has developed a survey of the immersiveness of games, which tells you how immersive a game is. And also the immersibility of individuals, which tells you, it tells you about like the person's tendency to become immersed over any number of games. So, you know, if you have a high immersive tendency, you'll be more likely to become immersed in a lot of different games. But mine looks at the actual experience of becoming immersed, so what actually happens to people when they're becoming immersed. And if you went and played a game and then you filled out my questionnaire, it would tell you how immersed you were in that particular game experience rather than in general in that game or in general in immersion. So when I went through it, I ended up with 1,500 statements, which is clearly far too long for a questionnaire because it would be kind of insane. You'd be filling it out forever. And so I've cut that down to about 60 now. And so there are two sections. The first section is for games without characters, and it pretty much, things like Tetris and stuff like that, it says things like, I got very caught up in the adrenaline, I didn't notice time passing, people tried to distract me and I didn't notice them. And then the other one talks more kind of about the characters and feeling how the character felt and thinking how the character feels and stuff like that. So this is the URL for it, and I also have cards with it. So if anybody feels like filling in my questionnaire, because it's just gone live this weekend. So if anyone feels like filling it in, feel free. Thank you.
Okay, well, like Sean, I'm more of a lecturer, so I can't sit down. I force students have to sit down. I'm waiting for a class where they can kind of roam around too. But yeah, I mean, if you notice what Noreen and I are doing is it's kind of trying to get at the gamer's experience and you guys filling out questionnaires about games and us analyzing those data to figure out kind of what it is. So we're trying to do it from a kind of statistical method. So here's my view. You've got gamers and you've got games. Some gamers just can't get immersed in anything. They're like trying to sink, a filled up raft or something with styrofoam or something. You just push it down and it pops back up. You can't immerse these people. There are other people that are like lead. They just go whop right to the bottom. They can get into that game. I had a student in my lab who, she came back the next day and she looked really tired. Says, "Why did you look?" I got 6 hours of Snake. What? Snake? She was an immersible person. Okay, so anyway, so there's people that can get immersed or not immersed, and so that's the first part, is to do kind of individual differences among gamers. And then the second thing is to analyze games. What games immerse people in different ways? Some games really can suck the person in. They're like quicksand, and other games are kind of like the Dead Sea. You dive into it and just go boing right back out of it. It's terrible. Okay, and so it's those two things. You get the really immersible person and the really immersive game, and that's the marriage of real experience in games. So, this is really terrible, but like, 20, 25 years ago, I had this graduate student who then went on to work at the Army Research Institute in Orlando, which is cool because it's just down the road from Disney World. But he has bigger tools and toys in his lab because they deal with simulation of tanks, helicopters. They have simulators of everything, And so what his attitude was is that we have to have fidelity in simulators. They have to really look alike, feel alike, the real stuff. So, so he developed 2 questionnaires, one for immersiveness of people. So you get some recruit in, you know, and they figure, no, this isn't the real thing. Other people, it's really like they're driving a tank through Iraq. And so he noticed that aspect of the 2 things. And then on the other side, some simulators just were like the linked trainer. You ever see the old pictures of it? It was just a box. It was to train pilots, and it was just a box and a little thing, and somebody would kind of jiggle it, and they had a little, you know. So, but now these simulators are incredible. So he and his colleagues developed 2 things. It's in a paper, Whitner and Singer, like in '97. And so they developed these questionnaires, and I said, wow. So I started getting into games and said, why don't I take those questionnaires and repurpose them? So I had a group of students rewrite the questions to focus them around video games. So that is the point. So we have 2 instruments. One is immersibility of individuals, that's the IAI, and immersiveness of games, the ING. And so we got these 2, yeah, actually it was 98, 2 things. And then this is the fun of having a research lab. We used to do these boring studies. Now we do these studies where people come in and play video games, you know, and get credit for it. So they filled out this first questionnaire, a demographic questionnaire about themselves, how much, you know, they play games, etc. Male, female, and then they played a video game for at least 30 minutes. And we gave them a lot of different choices in my lab. They could play, you know, anything from Farmville, stuff on an iPad, up to, you know, we have a PS3, Xbox, Kinect, the whole 9 yards, and a 4x6 projector screen. So it's, you know, like mega screens, turn the lights down and everything. So a real immersive environment. So we went from really non-immersive situations, small screens, big screens, the whole gamut in different games. So they played it, and there was a lot of different games that we included in this so that we could get kind of the whole range of immersive experiences. Okay, so they played those, and we basically found 7 different factors for immersibility of individuals. One has to do with daydreaming. People that daydream more are more getting into games. People who really love stories and movies and television, they are immersible. People that love video games, obviously, are immersible. And people who really get into sports, either playing it, watching it, they get into the games. Of course, you know, pretty much Madden and FIFA. Okay, but there's things that act against it. One is the thing, dual tasking, you know? If I can do this thing and this thing at the same time, watch TV and knit at the same time, drive a cell phone, you're less immersible than people that just do focus on one thing. And the focusing of attention, if you can focus your attention and move it from one thing to another, that's a negative sort of thing. You have to, you know, not be in control of your attention. It has to be dragged, you know, by something else, like the video game. And then just maintaining alertness of, you know, things around you. You know, you're waiting for your, you know, this got back to this whole thing of, you know, of being alert to that little call. Dinner time. You know, if you're, gamers just don't hear that. At least in my household. Okay, so we have these 7 different factors. And we kind of parse this out into like males, females, gamers, and non-gamers. But this is just to give you an idea. These are males. Males are about at 50 percentile of daydreaming. Males actually are not into movies and TV so much. Much more into video games and sports, and kind of some dual tasking focus and alertness. The daydreaming and the dual tasking and focus and alertness really don't differ a whole lot between males and females. Females, they love the movies, chick flicks. I don't know, my wife and daughter always try to get me to watch those, but I'd rather play a video game. And also not so much into sports, you know. Come on, honey, let's watch the Cowboys, the Redskins. Okay, so there are pretty big differences among individuals. So if you're doing play testing for games and you want to get people immersed in a game that are not immersible, you want to play test with people that are, really the hard people to deal with, maybe not the people that are really immersible. Okay, so then we looked at the immersiveness of games, and this is where it kind of gets back into the visual presence in a game, what you're seeing, the graphic realism. The audio actually turns out to be a really much more important thing than a lot of people thought. I think the gaming industry is realizing this. That 5.1 surround sound, you've got to have this system, in your gaming space. It's really amazing. Some game I was playing recently that was like, wow, I didn't know that those speakers did that. Yeah, so audio presence is really amazing. And then sensory engagement, how much it really ties me into the movements of the game. And then sense of control, that I'm actually moving this character. I've really, got one with this avatar, this individual going through the game. I'm really, have this flow. Then there's a couple of things that act against a game. One is awareness of the interface. We've got one study having to do with video game controller complexity. How many different functions can this thing do? Some games are called a one-button game. There's only one button you use to play it. And then there are the Xbox and the PlayStation 3 controllers with multi-push, combos and everything. It gets very, very complex. And my study actually showed that the Tomb Raider series actually have the highest complexity of games because of the different modes: swimming, driving, everything, climbing. It's much more complex, and so that's my justification for playing those games. Okay, so awareness of the interface. If you have to look down and say, which button does which, it breaks the immersion. And then the next one is awareness of the real world. If you've got distractions around you, if you've got stuff. And it turns out that some of the games actually require you to have awareness of the real world. Okay? Ever turn on the Kinect? Ever turn on the Wii? It says, watch out for the lamp over here. Don't smack the other player in the face. You've got, you can't be so immersed that you're out of it. There's a whole series of great YouTube videos about dads smacking their kids. One of my teams did this whole thing on hazards of video games, and that's one of them. Okay. So we looked at some of the games to look at their immersiveness profiles. Wii Sports, visuals, a little bit under the average. It's only at 40 percentile. Auditory is about 50 percentile. Engagement isn't actually that good. Control is a little bit better, 50 percentile. But then the interface is actually kind of going up, and the sense, well, the interface is kind of, the Wiimotes are not really that great. And there is a very high sense of the surrounding people, because these were mostly like playing with 2 or 3 people in the room. So there's a lot of dialogue that goes on between people. Halo 3 is about 50% visual, so it's good. It's auditory, it's up there. Engagement is good, and at least the players that we had, they had a real good sense of control of their characters moving around. The interface is not so bad, and there's some sense of the surround as well. Dance Central, kind of the same sort of profile. Still kind of very much in sense of control, that I'm actually controlling this thing, because the motion capture, for these sorts of games is actually pretty good. Interface and surround. This is Dance Central, not 2. 2, that's going to differ because you're going to be aware of the other person next to you that could be dancing and challenging. Okay, so I'm going to conclude there. We're still collecting data, and on this project and a whole bunch of other projects, the whole idea is to have you guys give us the information about how to profile games in terms of immersibility, immersiveness, and a lot of other things. I've got a marketplace table about profiling games in terms of necessary skills, You name it. Our new website is the cool name Realms End, .umd.edu. Okay.